The YT series product line is one of the most iconic sets of ships in the galaxy, but other than a couple of them that have been used by famous smugglers and galactic heroes, most of the ships in it have remained fairly obscure. But among these obscure ships are a few cult classics, such as the subject of today's video. I'm Joey from Radio Free Coruscant, and this is the YT-1930. Design. The Corellian Engineering Corporation YT-1930 transport was a fairly ordinary YT series light freighter. In fact, its forward half was nearly identical to one configuration of the much more famous YT-1300. However, it did have some fairly obvious differences. The rear half of the ship had a large cutout in the center for its four small engines and its hyperdrive. The more noticeable addition, though, were the two wide, wedge-shaped protrusions containing the ship's enormous cargo holds. These gave the YT-1930 double the cargo capacity of most other YT series freighters, at the cost of making it look very silly. They also had the added unintentional side effect of giving the ship much more stable atmospheric flight than the other freighters in the line, and could function as stabilizers and brakes during flight. At the more familiar front of the ship, the YT-1930 had two cargo mandibles, much like those of the YT-1300. They had all the same functions and features, but were made less effective by the presence of the ship's cockpit in between them. This was placed there to make the ship less challenging to fly and give the pilots a better view, but did block part of the mandible's length and make their grip on cargo containers less secure. Internally, the YT-1930 was again pretty much the same as the YT-1300. The only major differences were the significantly larger rear cargo holds, each of which had a freezer at the back. There was also a small galley for cooking near the middle of the ship, and its cockpit was connected to the rest of the ship by an emergency airlock that allowed it to be sealed off for safety or possibly even ejected in case of disaster. There also may have been another airlock on the bottom of the ship. Specifications. The YT-1930 measured 36.8 meters long by about 26.5 meters wide and 6.3 meters tall. It had a respectable Class 2 hyperdrive with a Class 12 backup and a top atmospheric speed of 950 kilometers per hour. It was armed with one medium laser cannon turret. The ship required a crew of 2 and could carry 6 passengers, 4 months of consumables, and an exceptional 200 tons of cargo. Finally, it had a cost of 135,000 credits new, or 62,000 used. History. The history of the YT-1930 was unfortunately brief. It was created sometime after the YT-1300 and was largely based on that vessel. Less than 1,000 YT-1930s were built before the class was rendered obsolete by the new YT-2000. That ship incorporated many of the innovations introduced in the YT-1930, as well as adopting its general hull plan with the central cockpit between two mandibles. The YT-2000 ended up being a bit rushed, and the ship didn't turn out as well as it could have, but it still effectively replaced the YT-1930. Due to the extremely brief production run of the YT-1930, very few of these ships ever got any attention on the galactic stage. The Blaze of Glory and the Starbound Misfit were the only noteworthy examples of YT-1930s used for smuggling, and the Dorsal Killer and Wild Menagerie were used by bounty hunters. The Menagerie was particularly interesting, as its captain Zan Ransom also modified the ship to be able to capture exotic animals. But these 4 examples were really the only YT-1930s to gain any level of fame or infamy. And that's everything there is to know about the YT-1930. There isn't much to know about it, but I get a lot of comments asking for me to cover it, so it seemed worth a look. Let me know what you think of it, and what other ships you'd like to see covered in the future. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week. RFC, out.